Great. I'm Andrea Soper, or Zendoodles in all of the places, including the Twitters. I work at the Nerdery, where I'm a back-end developer for Drupal. I also do some work with iOS, and most recently with WordPress. I know. We won't even go there. I'm within the Drupal community. I also work a lot with the core mentoring team and help to coordinate code sprints and new contributor sprints, which is where I came to the process of code review. Who are you? You are hopefully developers or module maintainers or people who do back-end kind of coding, or maybe project managers who are familiar with code, or administrators who are somewhat familiar with code. We're going to talk about code a lot here. If this is not a session for you, I'm not going to be insulted if you leave. So, we'll start with maybe the process that we go through for reviewing code that gets into Drupal Core. So, how improvements are made. Some of you will recognize this slide because this is Angie's slide for how improvements are made. So what happens is, first, a user, we're going to call her Edwina. Edwina, the user, says, holy crap, there's this thing and it's wrong, it's bad, it's horrible. And she opens a bug report. Paula comes in and says, wow, okay, there's this thing and it's bad. It's all. She searches the issue queue and now she finds, oh look, there's already a bug report here. I guess it hasn't been fixed yet. I'll give it a go. I'll try to fix it. Uploads a patch, marks the issue as needs review in the issue queue, and all of a sudden, magically, Rachel, the reviewer, hops in and says, holy cow, what on earth are you doing here? Okay, I'll post some feedback. Marks the issue back to needs work, posts, Paula comes back in, tries again, fixes the new issue, and now, poor Wendy, the poor soul who's stuck on Windows XP, says, nope, I'm sorry, this breaks in Internet Explorer 6. Also, hey, mind your spelling. There's, you can't be spelling that stuff wrong. Marks it back to needs work, and Paula comes back, says try this, uploads a new patch, marks it needs review. Rachel, the viewer, says right on, and marks it as reviewed and tested. And that's how code gets into core. Generally, also, the next thing that happens is a committer has to come in and actually commit the patch, and that person also reviews the code bit too. So, what are the kinds of core reviews that happen in Drupal core? Well, we have the automated testing. When you upload a patch, the bot comes in and tests it, and that will set the issue status to needs review or needs work based on whether or not tests fail. And then we have the peer code review, like we're seeing in there, the Tatiana, the tester, and the Wendy, who, poor soul on Windows, goes and try the patch, make sure it works. Also, sometimes we review for accessibility, performance, security, usability, etc. We'll talk a little bit more about those later. And then the committer comes in at the end before they commit the code to core and reviews the code to make sure that they're happy with committing that. So why do we review? We review because we want to make sure that code standards are followed. We want to educate our developers on how to be, better developers, and because we want to have a quality in product, right? The code standards, some of the things that we want to make sure happen in the code standards are, that security is maintained, that the code is maintainable, it's well documented, and these kinds of things. And we want to mentor and educate Paula, the programmer, to make sure that she understands, how to do things within Drupal and what are, kind of best practices. We also want to educate Rachel, the reviewer. She generally needs to know, what the best things are to look for and that sort of thing. I know every time I review a patch, I learn things. Well, most things. And then also quality. We want to make sure that Drupal rocks. And we want to make sure that, and when you are reviewing code for for your projects and that sort of thing, you want to make sure that your code rocks too, that your site rocks. But hang on. What's important about reviewing? Well, we have to understand that when you're reviewing, like especially in core, where everything that is there is done by volunteers. Nobody's paid to do this. So we practice something called full frontal nicety, where we encourage the people who have contributed. You acknowledge that you've taken some effort, you've taken time, you've reviewed the issue, you've attempted to solve it, and we want to make sure that we let them know that we are grateful that they have done this. This even applies in organizations. Because I mean, if your developer, even if your developer has like really mucked it up entirely, they've still put effort into it, and you want to build a culture where your developers want to continue to work. You don't want to have that, oh, I'm not going to do it wrong. We have to build that culture. So full frontal nicety, encouraging, and the support improvement. So when you're saying, okay, now. Great, thank you for contributing, thank you for your effort on this, but please fix this, right? You have to be specific about what needs to be fixed. You have to make sure to provide links to documentation if it exists for how to fix it and what it should look like when it's done. So now we can get back to the process. So what needs to be reviewed when you're reviewing code, and what things are we going to look for? Well, first, does it work? Does the new code work? If it's a patch, we have to apply it. We have to make sure that it does what it says on the label. Does it fix the issue? Does it stay on scope? And does it not introduce regressions? Now, of course, in the issue queue, we have the bot that tests for regressions. Certainly, there are some things that don't have tests yet, so we just have to make sure it's installed, poke around, make sure that everything works okay, and that nothing has changed that's not part of the issue itself. Then we have to look at the code. Does the code make sense? Is it well documented? Do you understand what's going on in the patch? If you don't, maybe you should ask some questions. Even if it's sometimes we are afraid to ask questions. We don't want to sound like we don't know what's going on. Like, okay, they've implemented this really complex algorithm and it's awesome, and I'm not smart enough to understand it. But that's not. If you don't understand it, it's possible that the next guy that comes in to work on that code isn't going to understand it either. So ask questions. If it's a complex algorithm, then it should be well documented. Would someone not familiar with the issue understand this code? So if you're coming back in and you're looking at the code as a holistic piece of code, does it flow? Does it make sense? Does it make sense here? All of these sorts of things. Does it need more comments? I already talked about that a little bit. But, inline comment, I can't tell you how important inline comments are to tell you what's going on. It's just a really important thing. And then this is, one of those little touchy spots. Is there maybe a better solution? Okay, so sometimes perfect is the enemy of good, right? Is there a better solution? Often there is. But maybe this is a good enough solution. And maybe this is a good pragmatic solution that works. So you have to kind of balance that with the full nicety thing as well. We need to also review for code style. This is things like, are the indents proper, silly things which are very important for code maintainability. It's, some of us are, well, it's a pet peeve of mine to go in and have, somebody's using tabs instead of spaces, or it's just wrong. Like, the bracket that goes on the end of the line, it goes on the end of the line. It doesn't go on the next line. I know other people do it on the next line, but it goes on the end of the line. If parentheses, and then there's a space, and then there's a bracket. Don't put it down. And it's this crazy pet peeve, but it's one of those things that it's a distraction from the flow of the code if it's wrong and it's not consistent, and you can sometimes recognize problems very quickly because of the inconsistencies. In your organization, your code style might be different from the Drupal code style. That's fine. It needs to be documented, though, right? It needs to be well documented. You need to know what you expect. In Core, we have these things that are called the core gates. And these are the things that determine the most important things to get in. The most important things in order to, I'm sorry, they're gates. They stop. If these things aren't there, it won't get into Core. So documentation, we talked about that a little bit before, but there are other things that are not inline documentation. One of the things is issue summaries. This is if you look at the issue on Drupal.org, there's a blurb at the top. The original poster, it comes from where the original poster said, hey, this is messed up. The password is not validated correctly or whatever. And then people can go in and edit that. And so as the issue progresses, the issue summary should also progress so that it is a very clear and distinct description of what the problem is with very clear steps to reproduce. Inline API documentation, we kind of talked about inline documentation and that sort of thing. If the API is changed, module.api.php should be changed. Hook help, if there are any changes in the way that the module behaves, probably hook help needs to be updated. And the change notice, which happens after the thing is committed, the change notice goes in so that people know what has been changed. Another core gate is performance. This includes things like your SQL queries to make sure that they're not. If you've changed a SQL query, it needs to be reviewed to make sure that we're not introducing performance issues. Caching, any kind of memory usage, system calls, front end. At this point, I'm going to try really hard to channel Mark's on a moment. I'm going to say something about you have to measure it, right? You need to make sure that you. There's a word and I've lost it, but test it without the patch, see how it performs, and then test it with the patch and see how it performs. There's a word. No.
Baseline?
A baseline is good, but that's not the word I was looking for.
Regression test?
It's okay. We'll move on. So yeah, but test it. Make sure that that we're not solving problems that don't exist.
Wait, is that always like a subjective thing? Like how much is an acceptable amount of slowing down, or is there like a metric?
That's a very good question, and I am not as equipped to answer that right now this minute, and am trying to get through this really fast.
Yeah,
but no, it's a really good question, and I think that it is subjective. Nobody. I mean, it's not like a patch should only implement or introduce 1%. I don't know that anyone has said here's where the line is. Accessibility, another gate. We want to make sure that we don't introduce any accessibility problems. So we conform to WCAG and ATAG 2.0 versions on those. We want to make sure that the text color contrast is enough. Like this is a deep red and white, but if it were like there weren't enough contrast, that would be problematic. We want to make sure all the form fields are labeled, and that the JavaScript is keyboard usable, so you can tab between any kind of fields and that sort of thing. And if as far as the accessibility and usability things, these are issues that if you feel like you're not sure about something, it's okay to just ask, right? We have a lot of experts in these fields, and just say, and you can mark it in the issue queue. You can mark an issue, needs usability testing or needs accessibility testing. But anything that changes the UI should be at least reviewed for this. Any UI changes undergo usability review. You need to follow the UI guidelines and document any kind of new patterns and usability changes, and definitely supply screenshots within the issue and rationale for making changes to the UI. And the last core gate is test coverage. We need to make sure that anytime that like we're fixing a bug, that we have a test to make sure that we don't regress. So we upload a patch that has the test itself that demonstrates that the patch fails. Then we upload another patch that has the test and the fix, and that test should pass. And that's how we know that there's a test for it, and that this actually fixes it. We need to, and anything that needs manual testing should have screenshots in the issue. Which is kind of awesome. Kathy who's also a local person, has taught us a lot of great things about that. And you can see me after, and I'll send you some links to some of her documentation on screenshots and that sort of thing. And if you need to, don't be afraid to provide a test module. So how do we review? What's the process? It's one of those things. We do have some tools that are really helpful in reviewing. Dreditor is one, and you can go to drupal.org/project/Dreditor, and that will link you to the place on GitHub because they moved it to GitHub. I don't know that.
It's Dreditor.org.
Is it Dreditor.org?
I think so.
Oh, right on. I need to change that on my slide. And download that. It's a plugin that goes into your browser and allows you to pop open so you know how when you click on a link in Drupal.org, it's just straight black and white code, the link to the patch itself. Dreditor gives you a in-place window with cool formatting and the whole diff. It's very, very nice, very handy. You should also feel free to use your IDE. PHP lint, which is the PHP-L, make sure there aren't any crazy bugs. And see also JS lint and CSS lint. Use the coder module if you like, code sniffer, and the grammar parser modules are also really handy. But first, before we get started, there some hints. Before you start to review an issue, especially like on Drupal.org, you can't unread the issue. There are sometimes like hundreds of comments on these issues, but once you've read everything and you know what the arguments have been and what the issue is trying to solve, you can't go back and forget that happened. So sometimes it's good to look at the patch first. There's a little link up at the top in Drupal.org that says go to the most recent attachment. You can just scroll straight down with that link, and it will take you to the most recent attachment. You can open that up before you even look at the rest of the things to get your head clouded with the other thing. The other thing would be perfect is the enemy of the good, right? Things, we do have standards that have to be followed, but we do also need to be pragmatic. And there are issues that just have not been committed, that haven't been marked as reviewed and tested by the community because people are very passionate about, no, it has to be solved in this way. And that can be a problem. And everyone is different. I'm going to talk about, my review process. You're going to have your own review process. The way that you process code is going to be different than mine. I would suggest that you document it so that you know how you do it and what you're looking for, and other people in your organization do too. I already talked about Dreditor. I'm just going to skip this, but I can't say enough about Dreditor. It's really, really awesome. So the first thing that I do is I open up the code, like I was talking about in Dreditor, and look at the code, and make sure that it stays on scope. I'm checking the most recent patch, and I want to check to make sure that there is if there is a tests-only patch, and if there are interdiffs. I also want to look at the diff stats. I want to see, how many files are changed and what changes have been made in them, and which functions are changed. And then I always scroll down to the bottom and check to see if there are tests, which brings us to the bottoms-up method. So now I'm already at the bottom. I'm making sure that there are tests, and now I'm going to read from the bottom up. Sounds unusual, but it kind of helps because you're going backwards, and it like flips your head around differently. So, and I learned this from Angie. She has a great site that I can link you to later on what her process is. So you read, line by line, going up, and make sure that there's, inline comments that make it clear on the way up, and then also check your API documentation as you go. And then now I'm back up at the top. I'm going to read back down. So I'm going to look at each function. Does the function make sense? Does the change stay in scope? Are we changing things that aren't even remotely related to the issue? You would be surprised how often this happens. And this is like, even if it's just white space, if it's not related to the issue, we want to stay on task. We want the patch to be succinct. Now, in your organization, that can be different because, like, if your policy in your organization is clean as you go, right? Then absolutely, if there's a white space change above and it fixes it, then you're absolutely allowed to do that. And is it well documented? Again, we're looking, back down. I use my IDE. I know that there are core reviewers that don't do that, but I always put it into my IDE unless it's like a really minuscule patch, because I can see the code in context, right? I can see what's around it, and the color coding I guess you get with the Dreditor thing, but you can also get step debugging, so you can kind of go through and let your IDE tell you what's going on and where your variables are changing and that sort of thing. And holy cow, I skipped an entire section. How did I skip an entire section? No idea. Well, that went faster than I thought. All right, well, I guess I didn't. It's good. It's good. I was talking too fast, but it's okay. Any questions? Go.
Yeah, well, you mentioned using your IDE.
Yes.
I use TextMate, which isn't really full-fledged IDE, and I've been wondering, and so I don't. You talk about being able to do breakpoints and things like that. I think I'd like to be able to do that kind of thing. And I'm just wondering, what IDE do you use and do other people here have?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I use PHP Storm. Is my IDE. You can download and try it for free.
Have you tried? Some people have recommended Eclipse, but
I've used Eclipse for the last 2.5 years. I just switched to PHP Storm.
I've used Eclipse and not stuck with it.
Switching to PHP Storm, like I don't have any complaints about Eclipse, and then I use PHP Storm. I'm like, this is vastly better.
Yeah, it is. It's really, yeah.
Again,
PHP Storm.
I was a Java programmer for long enough. I know what's in and out, and I knew all the shortcuts and stuff. I was real happy with Eclipse. And when I started using PHP Storm.
PHP Storm will run on a Mac.
Yes.
Yeah, and NetBeans too. So
Yeah, I use NetBeans. It's free. And I just do basic coding. I don't know if there's like advanced features that I'm missing out on, but like it works very well for me just for debugging and stuff. But
I would say trust in IDE, but
Absolutely.
Drupal 8. I mean, you might be able to get away with it in Drupal 7 a little bit, but with Drupal 8, with its more class-based structure of code.
yeah, being able to step through a debug is very, very valuable.
Yeah,
Trying to
sure.
troubleshoot stuff.
Yeah, I mean, my way of getting around that is I write lines of code and spit out there.
Yeah.
So it's not
That's just so inefficient. It takes so much longer.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think I have any modules in here at all. No. Yep, this is PHP Storm. Anybody have a preference of what what we should pop open and look at?
The color module.
Color? Hang on. There we go. Oh yeah. And yeah, and there are different like themes and everything. I see a lot of people using like a darker theme, but this is the one I like.
And the syntax highlighting your basic text editor you can usually do nowadays, but like the real power is the debugging
Look at the plugin.
and like auto completing. Right?
Is there a plugin for this?
For the
Color module? That might be where we can see some of the IDE capabilities. Look at maybe views then.
I don't have views. This is this 8? I don't think I even have 8 checked out. I can check out 8.
I need to recommend that over Sublime Text.
Yes.
Sublime can do a lot of stuff.
It can.
I know
It's
that
Sublime is-
text work with the ability to select one document in a class. I know you could. I read a bunch of articles, but it doesn't come out of the box. You have to add
You
it
gotta do a lot of work with the plugins. Yeah, that's for sure. It's got the linkers and everything.
Yeah.
plugins, whatever.
So,
Yeah.
but you get all that stuff for clips too. So whatever you're most familiar with, whatever you want to work with, whatever's cheapest for you.
I'm just checking out AX.
Git and that kind of thing.
Oh, yeah. All of them.
Yeah.
I have one practical question about working with Core that I've always wondered, like, when you're working on a patch, I assume, or when you're looking at issue, it's relative to some version of Core that's, I assume, is constantly changing, right? Because like it's a moving target as new patches get rolled into it. Is there a, how do you deal with that practically? Like when you're looking at one patch that may be based on one version of Drupal because it was started newer versus the old one.
Right. So we always patch the most current or head first. We start with head. So right now, any kind of bug fix is going to go into 8x first.
So like as it goes.
No,
like
as it
issue
goes,
is
if the issue is created in for Drupal 6, and now Drupal 7 was being worked on, then someone updated the issue to say nope. We're going to fix it in Drupal 7. And then Drupal 8 came along, and someone updated the issue to say, no, we're going to fix it in Drupal 8.
So whatever patch is finally accepted is always against the latest.
It's always against head, and then we backport to the prior versions.
So how do you deal with that, like when you're testing it to make sure? It always just seems odd. Maybe it's just because I'm not as much of a hardcore developer, but like, are you constantly having to have the latest version? You're constantly having to have the latest version installed on your computer to do your own testing and stuff. Like
Right.
you're trying to test.
Yeah.
it
This is
locally.
you just saw me update. I just changed from Drupal 7 or from Drupal 7 to Drupal 8, and it took me 20 seconds, 30 seconds, give or take. With Git, all I did was git check out 8x, and now I'm on the 8x version.
So you basically, if you have an older version, you have to do that before you check any patch to make sure it's.
Yes, you do have to have the most recent version, and a lot of times in the issue queue, a patch will need to be re-rolled. So it worked against an earlier version, especially when there's a seriously moving head like we have right now. So a patch that applied cleanly a month ago probably doesn't today, and it needs to be re-rolled, and we have re-roll instructions on how to do that.
I experienced that with the patch that I did. I noticed an issue while I was working on the Drupal 7 website, and so I submitted a ticket and a patch, and the people in the reviewers promptly said, well, you have to write a patch that works against Drupal 8 first. So so I did that, but then sort of sat there for a while, during which time other changes were being made to, and then the patch I wrote started breaking. That was like a year after I originally wrote it, and so I kind of had to write a new patch, and then finally after it got accepted for Drupal 8,
Right, and then it's
it
backported.
got backported to 7. It's a little frustrating to have it take that long for what was actually a pretty simple patch, but I think that's a fairly common experience.
It
And
is.
I understand it's because the stakes are so high for Core that
And we talk about that too, because I think that often people are afraid to even to submit a patch for Core because the stakes are high, and then people are also afraid to review patches for Core, and so then especially problematic with new contributors because you don't want for your patch to sit out there and languish for years, but they really do, and it's an issue that we talk about quite a bit actually, and the Core mentoring program is trying to help with that. We do review quite a few patches. Obviously, we can't get to everything, but we do try. So since we have just a little bit more time and not a lot, I just wanted to show you what Dreditor looks like and some of the other things that we were talking about. So this is a new feature in Dreditor. If I wanted to create like a new sub issue of this issue, I can clone it and it will create a new this is the link I was telling you about. Go to the most recent comment, go to the most recent attachment. So these will scroll me down to these. I can review, or I can apply the test on simplytest.me. I should have talked about simplytest.me. That's an amazing awesomeness, and we'll do that in just a second. This is what my patch looks like when I open it up. See how we have our diff stats over here? Which files are changed. I can go directly to this file that is changed. And then now,
Put a comment in there on line 45, see what that looks like.
right,
That's
so
something-
I can say, how about some white space before this comment, right? And then I say save. I could do, several other things and, make more comments in the thing, and then paste. And then I go over here and it automatically pastes into the thing what code I'm commenting on and the note that I made. Very, very handy. Very, very handy.
And this works on more than just core, like if you
Right.
want to contribute modules or something.
Yeah, anything on Drupal.org this works on.
That's just the review button. That's just the review
That's
button.
just the review button. Simply Test Me is a site that was created by Patrick D. This is kind of awesome. So see how what we have here, simplytest.me is, you can evaluate, code, and it spins up a new Drupal instance for you. So but I clicked the button in Dreditor, and it gave me the, in this little guy right here, it gave me the patch. So I'm going to install Drupal 8 and apply this patch to it, and then say go, launch the sandbox, and it will spin up the instance of Drupal 8. Actually, it's going to complain because it was red in the test, and so it might not actually work. When it tries to apply the patch, it might say no, I'm not going to do that because
And that also works with Drupal
7.
contrib modules, so that if you want to test a patched module, it will spin up an instance of whatever version of Drupal the module it patches for, apply the patch and you got a running test in this instance. That is
It's
pretty awesome.
Yeah, and I mean, you can go directly to simplytest.me and install a Drupal core and a couple of modules and test out the modules. You only get 30 minutes unless you sign in, and then you get an hour, and then your instance is tossed away and you have to start from scratch. But really, really handy in this instance of testing out patches and that sort of thing.
Does it cost anything to sign up?
Oh, it's free, but gettip.com. Patrick D is on gettip.com. Let me see. Can you search? Also, Alex Pott quit his job so he can be a core committer. Give him money.
Throw a few bucks.
Yeah, throw a few bucks. And this is a monthly thing. So every month, Alex Pott gets $435. I thought Patrick D was up in the top. Ooh. Is it Choo Cheese?
Maybe not. Yeah, that's fair.
That's not Patrick D. Is that him? Doesn't look like him at all. Okay, so don't give to that guy. Give it to the real Patrick D. Get to. I don't know. Anyway, Patrick D. And here is. I can probably stop screen recording, can't I? So here we are. We're configuring. Save and continue. And now, has everybody in here seen Drupal 8? Incidentally, no.
Want to do a plug for the
This is Drupal 8.